Over to you. Let's jump in.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you all so much for being here. And we'll just start off this presentation here with land acknowledgement. So the City of Toronto acknowledges that we are on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabeg, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. The city also acknowledges that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13, signed with the Mississaugas of the Credit, and the Williams Treaties, signed with multiple Mississaugas and Chippewa bands. Uh, Next, we'll uh, speak to the African ancestral acknowledgement. So, though I am not a person of African descent, I am committed to continually acting in support of and in solidarity with Black communities seeking freedom and reparative justice in light of the history and ongoing legacy of slavery that continues to impact Black communities in Canada. As part of this commitment, I would also like to acknowledge that not all people came to these lands as migrants and settlers. Specifically, I wish to acknowledge that those of us who came here involuntarily, particularly those brought to these lands as a result of the transatlantic slave trade and slavery. In support of the City of Toronto's ongoing efforts to confront anti-Black racism, I pay tribute to those ancestors of African origin and descent. Okay, so I will pass things over to Andrew.
Great, thanks, Kim. And thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight and taking time out of your busy lives, especially in the evening. Nice to see some familiar faces, including a couple of our Climate Advisory Group members. Nice to meet some new faces. So thank you again for joining us. I'll just run through the outline really quickly here to tell you a bit about what we're going to talk about. A little bit of background on TransformTO. Probably most of you are familiar with it, but I'll give you a quick overview and talk a little bit about how this process relates to our climate strategy. We'll talk a bit about the path to net zero, so like where we're at now and where we're trying to get to. A bit more into the specifics of the action plan, which is what this consultation is all about, this process. And then finally, we'll get into some details on the group discussions, which is, of course, why we're on this call to begin with. So we'll have some time for Q&A at the end. So some background on TransformTO and the net zero strategy. Some of you might know, like the original TransformTO was passed by Council in 2017. And in 2019, Council declared a climate emergency and directed staff to come up with a strategy and a way to get to net zero emissions by 2050 or sooner. So the old strategy had a target of 80% reduction of emissions based on the 1990 baseline that's on the screen there by 2050. So now we have a strategy that's 10 years sooner and is down to net zero emissions, which is a bigger challenge, of course. This strategy was adopted by Council in December 2021. And in the strategy, there's also an interim target of a 65% reduction in emissions by 2030. So this action plan is meant to take us from 2026 to 2030. Obviously, a very important action plan to help us meet this interim target for 2030. And I'll talk a bit about when we get to the where we're at section, you'll see what kind of a challenge that is. Just quickly as well, what are net zero emissions? Those of you working in climate all the time probably know this already, but basically it means like as close to zero emissions as possible, right? So we're trying to get down as close to zero, and then any remaining emissions will be offset through things like carbon credits or removals. And remaining emissions are likely to be things like methane gas that are already in the ground in landfills that we just can't do anything about. Possibly some industrial processes that can't be converted within the city boundaries. Possibly some buildings that can't be adequately converted, although, I mean, I'm not sure about examples of that, but those are just some potential ways that we couldn't get to absolute zero. So net zero will require offsets and removals. So the action plan is obviously a really important part of the strategy. So the strategy takes us up to 2040, net zero. It's a long-term strategy. Yeah, and within it are these shorter term 5-year action plans. So we're currently in working towards the end of our existing action plan, which takes us to the end of 2025, so the end of next year. And so the development of the next one will be obviously very important. The action plan, the current action plan is a set of 30 key actions in 7 sectors. So, as you probably know, buildings, energy, waste, transportation, engagement, natural solutions, those types of things. So we're working on the next action plan that'll take us up to 2030. And we're doing that through a few different processes. So we're doing technical modeling, which we'll talk a little bit about, and we're doing internal and external engagement and consultation to inform this next action plan. This is the timeline. CAG members have seen this before. So on the top is the internal work that I was talking about, right? So engaging with over 20 divisions, agencies, and corporations. So those are divisions like waste or parks or transportation services, agencies like the TTC, for example, Toronto Hydro. And so there's a lot of internal engagement that goes into developing these actions. There's a technical modeling process that looks at these actions and sort of maps them out over time to see which are what are the right actions we should be taking and how cost effective they are, what kind of impact they have, for example. If you look at the timeline in the middle of the slide, you'll see that we're sort of in the middle of that now, and we'll be working on drafting the action plan in the winter, and then it'll be going to committee and council in the spring. In the bottom half of the slide, you'll see the external engagement. So ongoing engagement with the city's climate advisory group. We're lucky to have 2 members here tonight from the CAG. And so the CAG has quarterly meetings and working groups. So there's a lot of ongoing engagement. This process is public consultation, and it's running from just launched last week into the end of January. So I guess that's, with the holidays, probably about 2.5 months of consultation. And these group discussions will be a really key component of this to get to talking to people all across the city. So where are we at on the path to net zero? There's a few ways we track this, obviously. So the first report you'll see on the left is our progress and accountability report, and that speaks directly to the actions that are in the strategy. And so this now comes out annually. This came out in March. It's the first one of this sort of new format that we're doing. But we have had a number of progress reports over time. But we're meant to be reporting now like annually on this. All of the reports are housed on the website. You see the link down on the bottom right under TransformTO. And you just have to go to a tab. I think it's just called Reports and Resources, and you'll find all the reports there. So there's that. There's like tracking like the action plan itself. But the other key way we track is obviously through the greenhouse gas inventory. That's also done on an annual basis. The most recent one is 2021, and the reason for that is that it basically takes 2 years to put it together for a variety of reasons. There's a lot of data collection, and we also get some what are called emissions factors that have to come from the government. So it's quite a complex process. The 2022 inventory will be out soon. So it's in development and I think being finalized right now. It normally is out around December, January, so it will be done soon. On the right, you'll see also our first consumption-based emissions inventory. We're not talking about that tonight, but I think I just put it up there for your info, because consumption-based emissions are an increasingly important part of what we manage. And probably will find it, their way into the new action plan and to some degree. Next slide, please. So in the 2021 inventory, the most recent one, again, probably a number of you are familiar with this. We have 3 key emission sectors that we track. Buildings make up, in the last inventory, 56% of our emissions. That's pretty constant. It's normally in the mid-50s somewhere. Transportation, 35%, and waste, 9%. So these are the three key sectors, and you'll notice in the consultation that we're really focusing quite heavily on the first two because they make up over 90% of our emissions. I'll get to some of the details in a couple slides from now on what is found within each of those sectors. This shows you sort of where we are now in relation to our 2040 targets. So we're currently in the 2021 inventory, 14.5 megatons. I know a few of you are quite familiar with this based on, briefings and communications we've had over the last year, but 2020 was our lowest year yet, and of course it was a COVID year, right? So there was a reasoning for that. There were lockdowns, there were people not driving as much, a real reduction in transportation emissions in 2020. And we did see a bounce back in 2021, unfortunately, but although that wasn't surprising, and of a 4% increase. And we might see something similar this year, right? Another increase. So if you look at our targets, 2025, 2030, and 2040, it's obvious that we need to get back on that downward trajectory, right? And so this action plan will be really important for us to get the right actions into the plan to get back to reducing the emissions at the rate we need to. And in this other donut graph, you'll see this breaks down the sectors in a bit more detail. So in the building sector, which is again around 55-56% of our emissions, a lot of it is natural gas, and that is basically used to heat single-family homes, multi-unit residential buildings, and commercial buildings. And then for the transportation sector, most of the emissions come from gasoline and diesel. I think about 70% of those emissions come from personal vehicles. So that's a really significant part of our emissions profile. For waste, it's almost entirely methane from landfills. So back to the action plan. So that's where we're at now, right? Big challenge in front of us. Not a lot of time to get there. And so we're consulting on the development of the next action plan, and we're doing that in a few ways. You'll notice in the materials that there's probably what you might think of as like a new focus on climate impacts, weather, for example. So and that's by design, because we are feeling that more and more in the city, right? So we're seeing like this photo of the Don Valley Parkway flooding again. I think it flooded 3 times this summer. We're getting a lot more heat waves. And so this is meant to grab people's attention, of course, but it's also true, right? This is what people are now feeling, and we want to know more about that. So we're asking more about it in the consultation. So there's two sides of it, both the adaptation or the resilience side, and the next slide is the emission slide, the emission side of it. And, oh, sorry, back one. Yeah. Oh, sorry, we do have one more. And this is,
Oh, sorry.
that's right. Yeah, this one. Again, this is just what we're asking in the consultation. How is the hotter, wilder weather impacting you? Back in the 50s, we only had 8 days a year above 30 Celsius, for example. Nowadays, it's more like 18, and if trends continue, it'll go to 29 in the 2030s and 54 by the 2060s. This is really significant for people, very significant public health impacts. Unfortunately, a lot of the people who experience this in the harshest way are the people who are least able to cope with this, right? They might not have air conditioning, they might not have resources to help them deal with the severe weather. So this is a really important thing for us to consult on. Then the other side of it is the mitigation side. So those of us who are working climate all the time use terms like mitigation, but it's really reducing emissions, right, is what this is all about. So like I mentioned before, through our inventory, heating single-family homes is the single biggest source of emissions. Multi-residential buildings, obviously very important as well, but that's a little bit of a different stakeholder, right? When you consider that some, buildings are owned, like some organizations or companies own multiple buildings. They're kind of, it's more of like a stakeholder level. We're trying to really get at homeowners through this consultation. And we're interested in finding ways to help people reduce their gas use at home. And typically you do that by installing an electric heat pump. In the middle box, you'll see transportation. So again, really significant part of our emissions, most of it, the 70% coming from personal vehicles. So how do we get people to drive less or not drive at all, or if they are driving, drive an electric vehicle? We know it's happening, but it's happening very slowly. How do we advance this to help us get on that steeper emissions reduction trajectory? And then finally is the third group that we put into our consultation is like the calm side or the use your voice side. Now I know that there's many other actions other than just heat pumps and driving that people can take, right? But those do represent, about 90% of our emissions. So we really feel like one of the important things for people who don't own their own home or don't own a car already is that this type of thing, which would be communicating and talking to people, talking to their landlord, talking to people at work, talking to other stakeholders, because we know it's going to take a community-wide effort. So using your voice is going to be a really important part of this consultation as well. So this is an infographic. Nicole talked a little bit about this for some of you who are on the call early on how emissions change when people drive less, and it was developed by a group called Black Arcs here in Toronto. It's meant to show how individual transportation choices influence emissions in a fictional neighborhood with about 10,000 people. We're calling it Anywhereville. And so you'll see how these clouds get smaller when people choose to leave their car at home or get rid of their car and walk up to 30 minutes or take their bike even just once a week. And it's quite astonishing the impacts that this can have. And we hope that this is a really interesting way to engage people. So when we hit play on the animation, you'll see the red cars pop up. And this is a neighborhood where everyone drives all the time. And on the right, in the green, is where people are walking and cycling. And in the bottom now, you see the emissions come out, and you notice like the significant reduction in people walking and cycling. In the top right, you'll notice a lot more green dots than red, and that's basically just because people are spending more time on the street when they're walking, right? A car trip is much shorter, so the red dot isn't out there as long. The green dots are out there a bit longer, but through walking or riding their bike. But the emissions reductions are very significant. And when you think about the other benefits like congestion and health benefits, right, there's a lot of significant benefits to reducing traffic in the city, in particular conventional vehicles that are burning gas. So we'll make this available on the website for people to make use of. Might be a useful discussion tool. We're going to probably get it up on the social media just to generate some interest. And on that note, we are putting all the materials on our website. It's at toronto.ca/net zero action plan. So you'll find everything you need there for your consultation, or for your group discussion. So there's a link to the survey, information on our webinars that are coming up. So one next week and one the following week. Info on the group discussions, including the group discussion guide, which we'll talk about in a moment. And then a list of pop-up events that we're doing throughout the month of November. Now that we've extended our deadline through the end of January, we'll plan to do more events in January as well. So they're not up there yet, but we will be doing our best to just get to all corners of the city and talk to as many people as we can over the next couple months. And so I think this is probably the last one for me, but this is a screenshot of the group discussion guide that Nicole and Stephanie are going to take us through. You'll notice when you take a look at it that there's a focus both on adaptation and mitigation, or weather and emissions deliberately. And we want to know what people are doing, what actions are people taking, what barriers are they facing, what supports do they need. We want to support people in making these changes. We know it's not easy. We know there are affordability issues out in the city. So we're really trying to get a sense of where people are at and how, what would help them to take the actions that we hope they can take. I think that's my last slide, and I'm going to hand it over to Stephanie, and she's going to take you through the group discussion guide in a bit more detail.
Thank you, Andrew. Hello, everyone. Good evening. My name is Stephanie, and I'm working with the third-party public team. I already introduced myself earlier. So we appreciate your interest and your willingness to bring these climate-related discussions to your networks, to your friends, to your nonprofit groups, to your organizations, whoever it is. We understand that the work that you're doing is important and hosting these conversations are important as well. So I'm going to walk you through what the group discussion guide is. Some of you may have seen it already on the website and maybe not. So I will just walk you through it so you're familiar with it. I think it's important to note that these group discussions, they're voluntary. So they're really up to you to make it work however you want to make it work. Like it's your choice if you want to have these type of discussions and bring these questions to your networks. So these conversations can be formal or informal. They can include as many people as you'd like to. And you can host this discussion as many times as you'd like, as long as you get that feedback into the city by January 31st deadline. So I'm here to, well, we're here to help you have those conversations. And today I'll just walk you through some of the components of the discussion guide. So before we start, I'm just going to go over some tips on how to host your own group discussion. I understand many of you already do a lot of work in the community, so some of this may be repetitive to you or you may know this. But in general, some tips for you are to set a time and place for connecting with your friends, your family, your neighbors, whoever it is, whether it's a sports team or a place of worship. You can talk to whoever you want as many times as you want. You're going to use the information sheet to share more information about the public consultation. You'll see the information sheet screen grab right here. So this will also be found on the website, and we will also email this to you all tomorrow. The information sheet has all of the content that you can use to talk to your group about TransformTO and like our climate is changing and what's happening. It's everything that Andrew has walked you through already. And then as you're hosting a conversation, you're going to encourage everyone to participate and share their experiences and perspectives. If some people don't want to share, they're feeling a little shy, don't be afraid to gently call them out and see what their experiences are, whether they're the same, whether they're different. You're going to, while you're having these conversations, you're going to be taking notes, and you can use the discussion guide, or you could take notes directly on the survey form if you'd like. You should consider reviewing these notes with your group before you wrap up to make sure that the key points are captured, that the key points that are captured are accurately reflected in your notes. Again, it's okay if people disagree. You can reflect that in your notes where people agree on some things and where people don't. And you can upload these notes to the survey website by scanning the QR code, which is found in the discussion guide or on the info sheet, or by typing in the consultation URL onto your search engine. We'll go over this in detail as well. So just to recap, the resources that are available to you if you choose to have a community group discussion are the online website, the TransformTO Net Zero Strategy Action Plan website. You'll have the info sheet and the group discussion guide, which contains all of the content that you need to know and bring to your group. This session is also being recorded and it'll be posted online. So you could even play this recording for your group if you think that works best. And then if you have any questions, you can reach out to Andrew's team at transform@toronto.ca. So the group discussion guide contains 2 sets of questions. As Andrew has mentioned before, they're on weather or climate adaptation and emissions, which is also referred to climate mitigation. And then you'll have a third group of questions for you to tell us about your group. So these are the questions that the city would really like feedback on. But if you find that your group is stuck on 1 question or 2 questions, your discussion is meant to be flexible. So if it doesn't work for your group, that's okay. You don't have to go through all of the questions. Or if you do go through all your questions, that's great as well. So at the top for the first section, which is about weather, hotter weather, wilder weather, you'll have a box at the top which explains what climate change adaptation refers to. And then you'll have some examples that can help your group answer questions. There are 5 questions. The first to refer to is the hotter weather, wetter, wilder weather impacting you? If so, how? What changes have you made in your day-to-day life to adapt to the changing climate? And here are some examples that can help inspire conversation. The next set of questions are there any barriers or challenges you have faced to adapt to the changing climate? What resources and supports have you accessed to assist you in overcoming these barriers and challenges? And what additional resources and supports would help you or would assist you in overcoming these barriers or challenges to adapt to the changing climate? The second group of questions, which again is about emissions, is very similar to the first set. You'll have a box at the top that explains what climate mitigation is. You can use that to help you answer the first question, which is what changes have you been making in your day-to-day life in order to reduce your GHG emissions? It can be anything from replacing gas furnaces with electric heat pumps to reducing waste. And the next set of questions are there any barriers or challenges that you face to reduce your GHG emissions? What resources or supports have you accessed to help you overcome these barriers or challenges? And what additional resources or supports would assist you in overcoming these barriers or challenges? And then finally, the last 4 questions are for you to tell us about your group. So how do the people in your group know each other? What is the name of your group or organization? If it's a informal discussion that you're having with friends or family, you can note that down, or you can type in NA, for example, if there's no formal name or formal organization. It also asks how many people participated in the group discussion, and if you have any other notes about your group that you'd like to tell the city. So once you've completed your group discussion, now you are at the stage to submit the feedback to the city, and you can do so by heading to the TransformTO website. So these are screen grabs of the website. So once you head to the website, you can do that by scanning the QR code or typing in the website. You're going to click on complete a survey. It's then going to redirect you to the survey platform, and it's going to ask you, are you completing the survey as an individual or on behalf of a group discussion? You're going to select the second choice, which says, I'm completing the survey to report on the results of a group discussion. You're going to hit next, and then you're going to get to the group discussion section. And here is where you can answer the questions by using the notes that you took during your group discussion. And these questions match your group discussion guide, so should be fairly easy. If you require any accessibility assistance, you can also call the research analyst, and the number is here. This information is also on the survey platform online. Great, and now I'm going to pass it over to Nicole.
Awesome. Thanks, all of you. That was the key information we wanted to get out. Welcome, Jackson. Saw you joined us there. And now is a good time for any questions. The idea is to inspire you, not to prescribe. And as much or as little of this would help you have a discussion with a crew of people, you take it. If you don't want to take notes and you just want to have a discussion and leave it, go ahead. If you want to go and have 10 discussions and take notes and give it all to the city, then even better. Really, this is right on the cusp of, getting people talking and educated and sharing and giving a care about this at the same time as getting the feedback in order to inform the city's next action plan. So don't for a second think all those questions. You have to answer every single one, take notes on every single one, answer every single one, talk about it with your group, get however the direction goes, be guided by the questions, but it's really up to you to go with it. So let's go. Lynn and then Judy.
I have one sort of maybe simple question and a sort of a bigger question. So the simple one is where you say, have you considered or have you installed air conditioning? It could say, or a heat pump. Some people will have done the better thing of a heat pump than air conditioning. And that would be a good discussion point, actually, and even to find out how many people might have installed heat pumps in your discussion group. So I don't know if you could change that. So there's that one. The other one is just about the fact that my understanding is the city wants, TransformTO wants, big, bold ideas that are going to substantially reduce emissions. And that might include big ideas like let's put solar panels on all the parking lots in the city. Let's generate a third of our electricity for the city right here from parking lots, which is what I understand from the Ontario Clean Air Alliance that we could do. So where do people put in their big ideas? What would you like to see the city do? What, big ideas do you have? And before I leave it, I do want to say that I really like the graphic on the emissions from a car-dependent community versus one with the more people walking and cycling. I think that something like that really does show people, that it's worth making a difference. I'd like to sit down with Doug Ford and say, here, have a look at this, And
The timing, eh? The
well,
timing.
Mike Ford, we have constituents in Mike Ford's riding and other conservative MPPs, so maybe we should be trying to meet with them and show them these things. But anyway, that's sort of my big question. But the little one was, heat pumps. I thought that should be in there. Thanks.
Heat pumps is there, but it's not linked up with the air conditioning. So I don't know, Andrew, do you want to speak to it? And then also whether we can, I mean, we're always up for making things better as they go. So, it's not out of the question that we can adjust, but do you want to speak to those, adding the heat pump in reference integrated with the AC reference?
Yeah. I mean, I think we could probably update our PDFs, right? Just to add it, right? Like just AC heat pump, right? Because heat pumps can do AC. So that's a good point, Lynn. And if you've taken a look at the survey, we do ask people about heat pumps, like if they've done it, if they're interested, barriers, that type of thing. So I think that's a good point. I've just made a note of that, and I don't see any reason why we couldn't, just sort of add that and like re-upload the PDFs possibly with that note.
We can probably add a question like, what big ideas do you have somewhere in the group discussion and in the and on the online survey. That should be pretty straightforward too. And see
Okay.
what people come up with. What do you
Yeah,
think?
and that's the type of thing also that we're modeling as well, as you probably know, Lynn. Like I didn't talk a lot of detail about the modeling process, but it is modeling things like solar uptake and renewable energy and all sorts of different actions. So yeah, I mean that's the from the city side or the institutional side, like some really big things that large landowners could do, people with large buildings or large surfaces. And those ideas are definitely welcome in the process. But you'll notice that the questions are more about like what the individual could do.
Yeah.
All right, Judy, then Anne, then Karen. Judy.
Yeah, I'm just thinking that given that this is a citywide public consultation and a lot of communities don't have access to meeting spaces, is there any thought to working perhaps with libraries to allow groups to use unutilized program rooms more quickly, readily in the next couple of months to do these types of consultations rather than the slog of a process to book a program room with the library system? Again, it's a net benefit for the city. So you would think that there should be some kind of collaboration with the libraries on something like that.
We just were talking with the library. They were super responsive to get a poster out into all 102 locations with the QR code and what's going on. And through some combination, Andrew, of you and I, we can probably follow up to see if there's any, I mean, that would really be a nice relationship for all time, for all the consultations that are happening. So we can follow up and then get back, Judy, to all of you and find out what might be feasible or not. My expectation is that there is a revenue constraint on the library would have them prioritizing potentially certain users over others to use those spaces, but I have no idea. Like that is not my spot. Let me ask. But it's a great suggestion. I'll follow up. All right, Anne.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for presenting all of this. So some of my questions have actually been asked, but I did have one question about, just a small question to start with, about, say you're asking people, have you put in solar energy, and you've got a group discussion. Then in your response, is there space for putting in how many of the individuals in that group have taken that action? That's taken into account. Okay, great.
Well,
It's general, like it's
Yeah.
general. We're not putting the burden of a quantitative exercise on you guys. You'll be like, here's my crew. If you want to say I had 10 for it, done it, then you could, but the level of rigor on that is not super prescriptive, so that people do not feel obligated to go and do like a hyper vigilant count. It's really a qualitative exercise.
Okay.
Yeah, and sorry, and just to add to that, we would encourage all the participants to also do the individual survey then as well, right? So
Okay.
you can capture all the notes. The fields are unlimited, so you take a bunch of notes and you can pop all your notes into that group survey, and then tell everyone, please also do a survey on your own, and we can capture the quantitative information probably more so through the individual surveys.
Okay. And then also just seconding Lynn's question there about the big ideas, having that in there, I think would be really great, because a lot of people would want to be, well, I think a lot of people would like to know what the city has already done. Like, I feel like that would be an important piece of information. Then it's more like, join us. We're on this journey. We've done this work. We've had all of these successes. Join us as we continue. So that could be useful information to include, so that people don't feel like, who are new to this, that, oh, the city's starting a plan, I didn't know, and how far have they got? It's like, no, actually the city's come a fair way, and we can join in this process and contribute and have ideas about how we could develop this further. So noting that, I would love to see that map I love the map with the emissions going down. I would love to see on top of that, the health impacts, like how many kids had fewer asthma attacks as a result of that? How many, fewer trips were there to the ER because of all of the other health impacts from the ongoing, burning of fossil fuels and fossil fuel air pollution? And then lastly, I was going to ask if you are doing this consultation with some of the big landowners. I realize it would take a different form, but I'm connected with the school board. The TDSB outside of the city is the second biggest emitter of greenhouse gases in the province. Like, it's actually huge. But they are doing a huge amount of work to reduce those emissions, and have actually, in the last year, with one pilot study in one area, have saved over $1 million, and also significantly reduced emissions from one sector just through monitoring the energy that they are using and centralizing the control of that, and so that the schools aren't heating all weekend or have the air conditioning on all night, etc., etc. So that's, there's some great lessons there with what they're doing, and just sharing that information and bringing on the school boards, the hospitals, those groups. So if they are part of this consultation process, or if they're not, I would encourage some communication with those bodies, because they are doing good work and would benefit also from the good work that you're doing too. So I'll close there. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you. We've got all of those. And I know I'm just on the clock. We've got 8 minutes left. So I'm going to go to Karen, and then Lynn. I'm going to go to Zamani first, just because she hasn't had a chance as yet. Karen.
Thank you. I'll try to talk quickly. And that's very good news about the school's pilot project. My question was similar to what you were talking about, because you said that this is just directed to homeowners, this consultation process. So I was curious about what is being done in the multi-residential sector, because condominium, residential rental, they're big producers of greenhouse gas emissions. A lot of the equipment is very old in the buildings. And then, of course, there's the commercial and institutional. Is there some kind of other little project going on right now that that is inviting the building owners and the different institutional owners to participate in some way and to actually capture their interest. And we'll probably, if we're making these presentations to individuals in our communities, groups in our communities, they'll wonder, some of them might say, well, I'm renting, so what can I do about emissions? My landlord has the heat off until too late in the season, and then when they turn it on, it's too high, and in the summer there's no air conditioning. What exactly can I do? I have no control. So what is the plan? I mean, maybe Andrew can answer that question.
Sure, I'll take a quick stab at that. These are good points. Our consultation is also targeted at tenants, right? But we know that they're not decision makers, right? In the fuel source of a building. So we do want, the box that would apply to tenants would be that sort of red box we had up there, which is like talking to people, talking to your landlord, talking to a building manager, like what is the building doing, right? Advocating. But the city's consultation on that is done through separate programs. So that is the Better Buildings Partnership and the Greenwell Initiative, where they work with larger buildings. And that's done by so it's not part of this process, to be honest. That is done by our buildings teams. And they're also doing some consultation currently on things that you might be familiar with, which is Buildings Emission Performance Standards, or BEPS. And that's also a really important consultation. And that will begin with large landlord, what's the term? Like big buildings, like large square foot buildings. So BEPS is not going to be like introduced with homeowners or single family homes. Like that'll be down the road. They are targeting the biggest buildings and the biggest polluters. So that process is happening separately. But that engagement is it's being planned right now, and it will be part of this plan. It's just being done by our buildings team.
That's great news. And I just want to add one thing, that I really like how you've organized all of this, especially what you were showing on screen. I can't wait to look at the book, which I know I can have access to through the website.
Do you guys see this? This is page 2. That is on the website. So I just have to say that 4 years ago, there was not very many of these group conversations. And in part, I think it's because the discussion guide was 20 to 30 pages long. We've done something that's 4 pages. And so it's got links to places where you can go learn stuff. And I guess I just wanted to reinforce what Andrew said, is that as you work through the survey, you'll see if you're a homeowner, you get bumped to a certain kind of question. If you say no, you're not dragged through that. And then on the transportation one, if you own a car, you get bumped to a certain set of questions. If you don't, you get skipped to the third one, which is everybody can do it, is use your voice. And it was really because of the climate advisory group that this use your voice got elevated. It was really clear, like, you need to be able to encourage people to advocate. So I would say, like, we're doing pop-ups at the Lawrence Allen Mall, at the Scarborough Town Center food court. Like, the Live Green folks are all around. So it's really, I just don't want to leave anybody with the impression that this is for homeowners. It's really for like anybody. There are tons of things that you can do, but the city's zeroing in on purpose where 90% of the emissions come. Okay, Zamani, and we will see if we have time for Lynn. I also wanted to check in on Moonjaw, Jackson, VG, and Debbie in case they had anything quick. So, Zamani, before I come to you, Lynn, just only trying to make my way through.
All right, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so I actually appreciate all that has been said already, and I fully agree. The questions I was going to ask actually have been asked already, which is by the lady who spoke before me, because I was thinking to myself, okay, well, I work within multi-unit residential buildings and also like townhomes, so people who have, it's not a high rise, but they're, homes spread across like some land space. So one of the things I was also going to ask is, how TCHC is involved in this, but I know we say we do have, I hear you, Andrew, when you say we do have people working on it, but I don't know. I know for certain I have not seen that engagement in my community. So I'm just wondering how robust the outreach is going for that. And one thing I just wanted to offer all of you, and because it's a way that I talk about climate in my own work. I consider it a conversation that we are all having. And some of us are not even part of the conversation yet because we have not we're not asking questions, we're not participating, we're just kind of going about our daily lives, not thinking about the fact that something larger is taking place, even though we are experiencing some of the effects of it. So being part of the conversation means that also puts some responsibility on the people who, so for example, happen to be residents. Yes, you don't control the building, but you definitely have a say, which means you have a responsibility in this conversation, this ongoing conversation of climate and climate action and mitigation and the whole nine. So I like the discussion so far. I appreciate the efforts that the city is doing. I really think that I'm really looking forward to it going beyond the city because there are so much, just as you mentioned, there's so much in terms of the condos and the co-ops and the multi-residential buildings that are private. Those are some areas where they don't even pick up compost, for example, or any of those kind of things. These are really big deals. So I'm grateful and thank you for all this work and the tools that we have. I think these tools are going to go pretty far. So thank you.
Excellent. Lynn, I'm going to come to you last, also because you're at the CAG, so you have another mechanism to get to some of these folks. But Munja, VG, Jackson, Debbie, do you guys have any questions or comments before I go to Lynn and then we wrap up? Good. Munja.
Yes, I was here, but this kind of action by city, how many face community in GTA that leaders of a face community educate about this urgency about it? Because under the one face community congregant is so many hundreds, thousands of people in GTA, so many cultural groups. So leaders, if outreach from city, I don't know what kind of format city using it, try to educate them urgency. Then that minister or whoever leader, they take their message under that every Sunday or Wednesday, Friday, whatever worship. There is another way because we, especially cultural people, we're not going to search for GTA website daily. We're not going to check or update the database. So that's my 1 cent, not even 2 cents. Thank you.
Excellent. Places of worship, big deal. It's a quick way to get to lots of people, and getting posters out is one way too. Jackson.
Thank you for the opportunity, Stephanie. Thank you, everyone, for the very insightful presentation. Sadly, I joined late due to other commitment I had. I wanted to check if the slide deck for today's presentation will be shared subsequently. And also, I want to know if for our community consultation / our community engagement with a view of, increasing knowledge about climate action or climate change and mitigation and adaptation strategy, if we can sometimes request the support of subject matter experts or some of who are on this call, to join us. For example, I'm a community, I would say respectfully, a community leader in the Jane Finch area. Just yesterday, we had an engagement at the library, New York Woods Library. The engagement was around preserving Black rental affordability. And we had a huge team from the city of Toronto, Cabri, Confronting Anti-Black Racism Unit, another gentleman from the mayor's office, Kehinde, joined. It was a huge team from the city of Toronto. And it was a very, exciting engagement, discussing about home affordability, impact of transit, the ongoing construction transit in the neighborhood. Yeah, so I'd like to know if sometimes we can invite subject matters experts from, to actually complement our efforts. And also, I'd like to have a copy, if it's possible, realistically possible, to have a copy of this slide deck so that I can review. Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Jackson. Andrew, you want to jump in?
Sure, yeah. It's definitely possible to have subject matter experts. It's really just a question of timing and availability. So we could take, requests through email, through the Transform email, or Kim posted my and her email in the chat. So please, if you have a second, to just make note of those. Or you're also going to get, so Nicole will talk about the package that's being sent, including the slides, and you will have our email in there as well, which is transform@toronto.ca. So yeah, please let us know, what you have in mind, and we can, see if we can accommodate that as best we can. And Nicole, you might want to talk about what's being sent out.
Yeah, Jackson, one of the things we said out of the gate was you'll get an email tomorrow with all the materials that were shared today, and links to those same materials online. And if some people at the lunchtime briefing asked if we could also send them some hard copies of materials, and we said yes. So just tell us what you need. There's poster, there's discussion, there's these group discussion guides, there's information sheets. Just let us know. Okay. Great. Debbie and VG, super quick if you've got something. If not, I'm going to go to Lynn and then we're going to wrap up.
Yeah, this is Vijay here. So we have been doing community consultations with our low-income communities here. It might be challenging. That's what I foresee. If we are doing it on a voluntary basis, I don't know how it's going to how it's going to result out. But let me try out in the grassroots meeting also.
Amazing. Debbie. All right. In the interest of time, it's now or never. Lynn, over to you. Thanks for your patience.
Thank you. I wanted to make sure everyone is invited to the event we're doing on November 13th. That is TCAN, Toronto Climate Action Network. We're having David Miller and some other speakers address what cities can do. So thinking beyond Toronto, what other cities around the world are doing to bring emissions down. So you'd all be very welcome to join that webinar. We're hoping it will help inform the process. But I also wanted to just say that, I think this is as important as the city budget. This is 5 years of our plan to reduce emissions 20% in our cities. Is huge. And we're not getting in-person meetings in each neighborhood, and we're not getting councillors and the mayor coming out to show it's important. And I wondered if there is a way we could be involving councillors, and it's something that our TCAN City Strategy Group may look at. We have sent the invitation to November 13th to the councillors' offices, and we are trying to develop a plan to have advocates in each councillor's ward to talk to those councillors about TransformTO, because I think many of them don't know even as much as you shared with us tonight. I bet you that there's councillors that don't even know that much. And even though I know you're willing to go and talk to the manager and your other staff, I don't know whether they ask you for it. But anyway, so we want to bring the councillors along and have them know our constituents care. And I just wanted to, to put it out there for ideas. Also, because we're extending a month, which I'm grateful for, I'm hoping that you might run another one of these for facilitators, because they didn't really have much chance. It's just been a few days since we got the email to put it out to people for them to plan to come to it. But if you do choose a new date, then on November 13th, when we have that webinar, we can let people know, because we're expecting quite a few TCAN people to show up there, of another opportunity to get this introduction. And we'll be asking groups to set up their own group consultation. So I'll stop. But
I don't think there's a reason. Is there a reason we can't do that?
The mayor's
Andrew?
Yeah, Lynn, if there's interest and demand, we could definitely do another session. And as Nicole mentioned, we've recorded both of them, so we'll put them up on the website so people can watch them. But if there is an interest in like not in person, obviously, but but a live WebEx or a Zoom session, we can definitely do that. On the council item, this consultation process was sent to councillors in their weekly briefing, so they're aware of it. But I do take your point, right, that this is not like direct engagement with counselors. Like we sent them information, we sent them some communications materials. I think it might be helpful. I'm not trying to pass this on to all of you guys, but I do think it's powerful when it comes from constituents saying, hey, what are you guys doing about this? Like, are you hosting a discussion? Last time around, a couple of the counselors took us up on this, and I even presented at one of the counselors' sessions. So that would be 3 years ago, last time we did this. So I think that's a good idea. And I would encourage anyone to reach out to their counselor and say, like, are you hosting anything on this? Are you involved? You know what's going on? Sorry, I don't mean to put it back onto you, but we do
but they
provide
might-
them with briefings. And we're happy to help them if they do want to host one in their ward, for sure.
They might co-host it, and they might put it in their newsletter. If we're
Yeah.
doing January, they'd have time to get it in their newsletter. So yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Right,
We did
so we'll
provide
make-
some newsletter content for them. So that would be, and some social media content. So they have that. But I'll talk to our team a little bit more about direct engagement, but certainly I would encourage people to reach out.
And I just have a note there, sorry, just briefly about other languages too, because other cultural groups, Munja, I'm not sure about your community, whether language translation is an issue or concern. It really would be very helpful to reach out into many diverse communities if we can on this, right?
Yeah, good point, Lynn. And we can translate materials. We're kind of doing that on demand just because there's a lot of different languages and so we didn't do all of it, but we've already agreed to translate materials into Farsi because we did receive that request at our noon session today. So if any of you have a request for a language that you'd like to see the materials in, please email us, Kim or me or Nicole or Stephanie or Transform, and we will add that to the list and we can translate the materials into that language.
So just to make it a super tight wrap up, Lynn, I'll try and get everything into the email that you'll get from Stephanie tomorrow. It includes contact information for Andrew, contact information for Kim. Lynn, if you send a note about the November 13th webinar, we'll put that in there too. So you've received an email from Stephanie, right, to get to here today with the agenda?
Yes.
Just reply to her and give her whatever you want to tell people about November 13th, like a link to register or whatever, okay? Give that tonight. Then we'll talk to Andrew about setting up another briefing so that you can promote it on November 13th. We'll put in a note about the translation on request into that email. And I think that's it. We've taken some notes during lunchtime and today. So there are a few improvements we're going to make as a result of your big brains, because we know that more brains are better than one.
Big brains with big ideas. Good.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm going to wrap it up here. I know we're just over time. We started a little late, so it's about an hour, and no reason we can't figure out another hour since the consultation was extended by 2 months, actually. It was supposed to end on December 1st, and now it's January 31st. So with 2 extra months, you can get quite a bit more done.
Yes.
All right. I'm going to wrap it up. Thank you very, very much. Andrew, last word to you.
Yeah, just wanted to say thank you to everyone. Really, again, really appreciate it. Love the enthusiasm. Really looking forward to community discussions and learning from these, to help us create the plan that we need to create. So thanks so much for, spending your valuable time with us. Appreciate it.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you. Good night,
See you
everybody.
soon.
Huge difference.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.